Hockey, yeah.
My favorite.
It's Judd's Hockey Show.
And it is Judd's Hockey Show. The Wild might be done, but we certainly aren't, as the Stanley Cup playoffs also continue on. And before we get to Jessi Pierce, before we get to AJ Fredrickson, and yours truly, Judd Zulgad, I want to give a quick shout out to the personal injury law firm of Judd's Hockey Show, and that, of course, is our friends from Nicolay Law. Nicolay Law knows that when your loved one gets injured, ordinary life can come to a stop. There's Russ right there, and things can get complicated. During that time, insurance companies are likely to pressure you. They don't care if you get better. They don't care if your medical bills are piling up, and they don't care that you may not be able to work. But Nicolay Law, they care about all of those things. They have seen every play the insurance companies have, and they will make sure you get the compensation you deserve after an accident. So if you have been injured, get Minnesota's local award-winning injury lawyers. Get Nicolay. Start your path to winning at nicolaylaw.com or give them a call at 1-855-NICOLAY, 1-855-NICOLET, nicolaylaw.com. And Russell did tell me, as nice as that suit is, he's far more of a jeans and t-shirt guy. So I like to hear that coming from a guy who personally hates to wear a suit. That's just me. Unlike hockey players who love to wear suits. Okay. Topic number one, we're just going to go through a variety of topics here. For Jessi and AJ is this. Brock Boeser has had a great year, and the Burnsville native is absolutely thriving in the playoffs. What the Canucks and Oilers are tied at 2. It's a hell of a series. He is going to be an unrestricted free agent after next season. If you start to tie things together, salary cap, Wild suddenly doesn't have the hits that Suter and Parise are going to cause or have caused. Those go down by a ton. Wild has cap room. Jessi Pierce, as an insider, as someone who covers the Wild for NHL.com and talks about them all the time on Bardown Beauties, and by the way, spends a lot of time at the Summer League games as well at Braemar, the Beauty League. So you know Brock. What do you think the odds are that, one, the Wild would pursue him seriously, and two, that he would be very intrigued to come home?
I mean, I love the idea. I think Brock as a human is incredible, right? And this year he's finally gotten back to the player that he always has been. He was able to stay healthy. I think he'd missed just one game all season for the first time in his career. Plus 23, 73 points with 40 goals. First time in his career he's a 40-goal scorer as well. And as you'd mentioned in the playoffs, dude is crushing it. I'm loving Vancouver and what they're putting together on the ice for the most part. He's getting up there in age. I hate to say that. He'll be 28 coming up here. So that's,
old man.
It's getting there.
Old.
But it is. I think he also has really been very loyal and committed to the Vancouver Canucks as well. I think that's something to be considered. I think, yes, we all know the narrative of how close he is with his family and the trials and tribulations and challenges that he's had there. And certainly it looked like you wanted to welcome him home the past 2 seasons as he dealt with personal issues with his dad after his dad had passed. I think it's worth pursuing, of course. He's a hometown boy. He's very skilled beyond that. Beyond the hometown aspect, guys, he's a very, very good hockey player. I know we've talked and griped about how, they selected Joel Eriksson over Brock Boeser, and they could have had Brock Boeser. Joel Eriksson is a very good hockey player, too, so it's been okay. I think it's worth looking at. I think Bill Guerin has to kick the tires on every single possibility, no matter if there's a connection or not. And Brock Boeser is a player that could absolutely help elevate this team. He's a leader in the locker room, I think, as well, in addition to the skill set on the ice. So I would say go for it, especially when that money comes back into play and you can actually afford to realistically chase players like Brock Boeser. So yeah, I'm all in. Why not? And if you maybe were to trade a forward this offseason as well, you're really going to need him. We'll sprinkle that in. A little spice for you.
Why are you shaking your head? Age is like,
because she's teasing with some Marco Rossi stuff, and I absolute gamesman.
I ignored it, AJ. I'm going to give you some sports dad advice. Ignore it when other people on the show antagonize you.
When it comes to whether the Wild should pursue Brock Boeser or like the drive for him to maybe just come home, I want to say maybe the desire to play Minnesota might outweigh where the Wild, because when you look at it, it's a full calendar year before maybe Bill Guerin has to start making like crunch time decisions on where they need to go and whatnot. And a lot can change in a full calendar year. Who knows how they look like heading into the trade deadline next year, and who knows how vastly different the market is compared to this past trade deadline and what they can move and where they kind of sit. As of right now, I think Jesse's right. Like, that's a guy that you have to heavily pursue, especially if he puts up another similar season to what he's doing this year. I mean, he's got 12 points in the playoffs, 40 goal scorer for the first time in his career, and I think that's about what kind of people have expected from him. Everything he's gone through, you're now seeing the hockey player a lot of people have seen. Like prior, and kind of now it's materializing into that kind of end product. And when you look at the Canucks, like, they're going to have to make a decision too. It's not just Bill Guerin for going after certain players, but coming up in their system. I mean, right now they have JT Miller. Elias Pettersson is going to be moving to an $11.6 million AAV starting next year on his contract extension. They've got Quinn Hughes on the back end as like their main signing. He's extended through the 26-27 season, and Thatcher Demko's at 5 for the next few years. But coming up in their system, they have Jonathan Lekkerimäki, they have Aatu Ratti, and then they have their first-round pick a few years ago, Vasily Podkolzin, who they're going to have to kind of make a decision on. He's 22 now, that Russian guy. He stayed over there for a little longer. Is he a guy they want to hold on to? They have, similar to the Wild, they have some names coming up. It's not maybe as deep as the Wild, I would say, but they have a couple decent guys that they're going to be able to maybe like reload the clip, so to speak, if they lose a guy like Brock Boeser. It's hard to replace a 40-goal scorer on any team. They don't just, pop out of thin air and grow on trees, but it depends on do you want to use that somewhere else? Do you want to help Quinn Hughes on the back end? Because frankly, he could probably need it at times, despite what like a Zadorov has done for them in the postseason here. I would like to see it. Brock Boeser in Minnesota, I think that, like, as much as I would have loved to see a TJ Oshie at one point in his career, maybe come home to Minnesota, or a Kyle Oposo in his heyday come home to Minnesota after his time with the Gophers. Like, Brock Boeser, I think, screams Minnesota Wild. I think it'd be great to see him, but I wouldn't want just the ties to Minnesota be the lone reason why he maybe edges out somebody else. I love the emotional attachment, but I'd rather take overall performance. And from what we're seeing with him, he's got the playoff performance to really back it up, but a guy that's going to help in the long run, not just, he's a hometown guy. Now you got Brock, and then you got another Brock who's also from Minnesota. And it's like, Brock squared could be fun, but let's think about the long-term goals here.
Well, and I think that Bill Guerin doesn't necessarily love those connections either. He's a guy that did it himself, went and played for Boston. I remember when they brought Nick Bukestad home, he had mentioned to Nick Bukestad that, hey, this is going to be really hard. You're going to have people that are wanting tickets and wanting this, and it's going to feel this extra added amount of pressure, and it can be a challenge. So, I mean, it could also work the other way where it becomes too much of a distraction. I don't think that's the case with Brock Boeser at all. I think he handles himself very professionally, but yeah, I don't love just the ties. The biggest question, I think, surrounding Brock Boeser would be, what is he going to want? What is the asking price? Right now he's only at $6.65 million, which is very reasonable for the type of player that he is. But I imagine that's going to go up. I know Ben Hankinson very well, his agent, the owner and runner of the Beauty League. And he's somebody that's not afraid to ask for those big contracts and those big prices. I think it would be a long-term contract at probably looking closer to $8 million, give or take. Again, we'll see how he follows up this year with next year. But I think that's the other big question, because as Age had said, you do still have other players that you need to consider signing and extending. You've got Kirill, you've got Brock, you've got some of those mainstays here in Minnesota as well. And then you also, do you want to blow your whole load on one guy? Do you want to go out and get a couple of those other pieces? And that's what we're going to do. Sorry to use that curt term, Age.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Uh-huh.
I think what intrigues me here too is, and it, Boeser certainly in his current state qualifies, but I think one of the selling points to Kaprizov to stay here is going to be somebody else that can score a lot of goals. Like, because right now, if he doesn't score, they're sort of screwed. And now they've got guys coming up, but I think both of you could confirm we don't know that those guys coming up are going to score goals in abundance. And Zuccarello, who scores some but loves to pass, is going to be gone here at some point soon. So I think if your pitch to Kaprizov is, hey, stay, we're going to build a team here. We got some young talent. This team can win a cup. I think part of your pitch has to be, we also have at least one other guy that can score, let's say 40, and take some of the pressure and some of the presence that opponents put on you off. So like, that's where it might not be Boeser, but that's where another goal scorer, and I don't mean a developing one. I mean a guy that can just step in and score goals. Now they're expensive as hell. They're hard to find, But I'm also trying to think here sort of long term about what's going to keep Kirill here. And I think you need to tell Kirill, look, you're the best player on this team. That's not going to change, but we're going to find ways to alleviate some of the pressure. Because, like, if you go to these playoff series, what Kirill had, I think he's gone not great, really good, but they still lost in the first round, not great again as far as points production go. I think it's too easy right now for opponents to focus on Kirill. So, like, can you get a guy on another line who's going to score, perhaps a threat on the second line to score 40 goals?
And that's where maybe at the end of June, the Wild might have a chance to do that, depending on how the draft works out, because Cole Yzerman is a guy who I think is the best scorer in this draft. He's been slipping since the holiday season to where he could be around that 10, 11, 12, 13 position, depending on how things shake up and who reaches and who doesn't. But instead of, going out and spending on a guy like Brock Boeser, do they draft a guy that's been in the U.S. development program? He's going to be you next year, Cole Yzerman. And maybe that's a guy who he's younger, he's cheaper. And for the window that you're looking at with Kirill Kaprizov, you can allocate that to, maybe another supporting piece, or you reshore up some defensive products on the back end when that time comes, whenever it is.
Well, and if you get a guy like Cole Yzerman too, he's somebody that's not going to wait it out 4 years in college. Not that I love rushing guys out of that. I certainly love them doing their thing, but I think he's a player that could come and provide a more immediate relief versus some of the other first round picks that the Wild have had in the past, where you do have to, as Judd had mentioned, wait it out and see and hope and pray. And Cole Yzerman is a very talented guy that I think 1 year of college will do him just fine before he could come into an organization.
Second talking point, start with you again, Jessi. What did you think of the incident about 4 days ago, start of the World Championship, Sweden and U.S.? The U.S. scores, and Jules Eriksson gets very upset and goes after teammate Matt Boldy. I thought that was, what? It's funny because you watch Ek from a Wild perspective, and sometimes I'm like, my God, guys hate him. Like, he takes so much crap. And in that moment, you're like, oh, when I watch this from afar, I sort of get this more. Like, Eriksson will put up with nothing. And I thought that was absolutely hysterical and good for him that he didn't give a damn who he was mad at. He was going to try and get Boldy. And I think Boldy, from the look on his face, was like sort of surprised by it. Mm-hmm. It was it was great to watch, but it does sort of encapsulate Eriksson's competitive streak, which ultimately you love.
Well, exactly. Eriksson is who he is. It doesn't matter. He don't care. He don't care who he's playing up against. I think that's what makes this year's World Championships so much better, because it's been so long since we've seen the Olympics include the NHL players, where you have that teammate versus teammate at a very high level at the international competition. And now with the World Championships garnering more attention because more guys are playing, because of the implications it will have on the Four Nations roster and on the Olympic roster, it's fun again. It is so much fun because you're reminded how important it is for these NHL guys to wear that crest across their chest, no matter which it is. And I'm very excited to talk to both of them once they return back this way to get their piece on it, because it's funny. It's so different. It's like, this is your coworker every day. But in this one instance, I don't give an F. I am going to get out there and win for my country. Yes. And I think it was a stark reminder to Matt Boldy that he's lucky Jules Eriksson is on his side 90% of the time.
Yeah, the competitiveness there, it's so fun to see that, because even like if you think about like gym class in high school, you've got your buddies that maybe you go to every class with all that stuff, but then you play dodgeball one day and you're on the opposite side and it's like, oh, Johnny, we're best pals, whatever, blah blah blah, and all of a sudden Johnny throws a ball right in your face and now you're on the ground on your wallet, like what is going on here? It's the kind of camaraderie that's going to help maybe bond them down the road of, hey, I'm going to hold that over you. That you see them, especially around like college time, those U.S. guys will place the bets and whatnot. It's the same thing here, except they're actually playing against each other. But there's no friends out there in international competition unless you're wearing the same sweater. So I don't blame Eriksson, Boldy. Hey, that may be a lesson that when you're wearing blue and X wearing green or yellow, nobody's friends. You're gonna have to just deal with it.
That makes me more and more. I want to see that there's certain players on this team currently that I want to see the team make a playoff run, because it'd be so much fun. Like Eriksson competitive nature in January is off the charts. Can you imagine it in May? Like, he would be a guy. It's a shame that he got hurt in that game against Pittsburgh last year and couldn't play, or tried to play but couldn't, because he's a playoff guy that, like, for all of the Wild players where I'm like, he cares, but I don't think he gets it. Eriksson X the opposite.
Yeah.
He cares and he totally gets it, and he doesn't care. It could be his mother. I think he would flatten her with a check if push came to shove.
Well, and he's level-headed about it, though, too, right? Like, I think that's the difference between him and, say, Ryan Hartman, who lets the emotions, like, Eriksson Ek is going to go out there, he'll mean mug you and then skate away, and you'll still want to punch him in the face, but he's like, what? I'm just playing my game. Like, he is, I love that you said that, he is the epitome of a playoff player, right? Because he's got the skill, he's got the that front presence that's so good, and he can really stab it and twist you without getting caught for it either, which I think is always a positive.
He's a taller in some ways Marchand.
Not
Like,
nearly as annoying. Let's be honest. Like, not nearly.
Face
is punchable, maybe.
Not as vocal.
Yes, maybe that's
not as vocal. But here's the thing: is we don't. So that Boldy thing to me, though, I think because we watch him, we don't appreciate how annoying he truly is. Because opponents are always trying to punch him. Yeah. Like, it's incredible. Like, he takes abuse, and he's got to be vocal enough because the officials a lot of times ignore it. Now, we complain about that. But see, I think there's an underlying, and I sort of saw it with Boldy because I watched that probably with zero bias. I do think he's a great agitator.
I think he does it more physically versus vocally, though, right? I just get that. I
don't know what he does.
I can't picture it at all.
Guys hate his guts.
I think it was when Dean was still the coach. Like, he got in a big scuffle in front of the net, and somebody was like, "Hey, did you get anything? What did X say that maybe really like got under the skin?" And he's like, "I don't think he said anything." Like, he's just got that face of like, a look says 1,000 words. He doesn't actually say anything, and people are just like, "I'm so annoyed by you," and they just lose it. It's very reminiscent of my brother, right? Like, my brother pisses me off more and more because he doesn't react. He's a little, he's, but he doesn't react, right? So I'm not getting that reaction back, and I'm just getting more mad. It's just kind of like, okay. And they move away, and you're like, no, get back here. And you're just like, sorry for yelling. I just screamed, but it's very reminiscent. And I think that's what Ek does. I think he'll jab you maybe in the gut or, sneak in. And again, he's just got that big body physical presence in general. I don't even think it's necessarily cheap shots. It's just the way that he plays so heavy down low. And I think that annoys people. And so they might try to bait him, and he'll just go and look at you like, that.
Right.
That's my Eriksson face, and then skate away.
Well, and his face is like perpetually cut up.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like he's always got cuts and slices on his face and stuff. Yeah, you're right, though, because Hartman engages.
Yeah.
Like, he agitates, but then he engages and gets penalties. Ek does a really good job at pissing you off, and then you're right, skating away.
And you want that. You need the reaction back, and you're like, well, now I'm even more mad.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true. That sounds like a relationship problem as well, Jessi. By the way, you might want to talk to Mike.
He gets everything he wants all the time. It's obnoxious. Anyway.
All right, third talking point. Age, you're more of our prospect expert. Jessi, you are our insider and reporter. So I will sit back after I ask this question. I hope I pronounce his name right. The Wild put Vladislav Firstov from Russia. Firstov on waivers, terminate his contract. He had played approximately 19 games over 3 seasons with Iowa. He's going back to the KHL. Jessi, start with you. Is this what's your assessment of a second round pick from 2019 being cut loose?
I mean, there was a lot of hype around him during the selection. I mean, it seemed like a good pick. You kind of heard ins and outs about him, but also, as we know, those Russian players can be very, very hard to convince to come over here. And obviously the KHL is a really, really good organization for players to develop, and especially, for those Russian guys to stay. So I probably don't know nearly as much about him as probably Age does. But for me, I was kind of like, okay, it seemed a little odd, seemed a little peculiar because, again, he was a name that you would hear spurts of here and there. So it was definitely somebody I think that the organization was sweet on, if you will.
Yeah.
But will replace him. Brock Boeser is probably a better player anyway. So, good old American boy. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, he's a second-round pick, and like Jessi said, kind of like it was the original selection was like, okay, nice. Like maybe he wasn't going to fall this far, but the thing about it is, from my understanding, he had a chance to come over earlier than he did and just kind of like shrugged off, I'll stay in Russia. Not necessarily. Sometimes we've seen it where it's there's outside influences. They maybe say, you know what, we'll have you stay one more year. Like, you're not going anywhere. We'll have you stay. It was more of his decision, which I guess probably, I would assume, rubbed the organization a little bit of the wrong way. But then also there was at times, I want to say, some flakes of how serious is he about being a pro NHLer. It's just similar to not maybe about as close as we can get to what we saw with Gustafsson this year, where Jessi, you've mentioned like, the physicality stuff. Is he putting in the right diet? Is he getting up at the right time to go work out? That type of thing. Was Firstov doing all of those pro habit type things? No, not really. So I don't think this is this is not going to be the end all be all. They're not losing a coveted gem of a prospect by any means by, terminating his contract. It's more so probably boosting in terms of morale, because you don't have to worry about this guy coming in and just being some sort of cancer in a locker room of like, he's shrugging off stuff. Maybe he's not coachable. Maybe he's not going to mesh as well. Does he have raw natural ability? Yeah. You don't be a second round pick in the NHL draft for nothing, but
right.
It's a decision that I think nobody's really going to lose sleep over in the Wild front office. So
it's the draft slot is the only thing I thought, because if this was like a 6th round pick, okay, that, a second round pick is still a good pick, but I mean, it does sound like this kid was hemming and hawing at best. The club today announces some changes. Matt Sells, Michael Murray, and Chris Kelleher have been promoted from their various internal positions to assistant GMs. Matt Hendricks, a longtime former National Hockey League player, promoted to GM of the Iowa Wild. It sounds like Sells is going to take over as the salary cap guy, which of course the Wild was trying to find. Here's my question, Jessi, do we expect any changes with the coaching staff? Because, they did make a change with Dean when Dean was fired. John Hines came in and inherited much of the staff, including Darby. And Bill Guerin basically said at his end of the season press conference, hey, we're probably going to wait on more changes. We're not going to announce them right now. Do we expect the coaching staff to return intact, or are we still on alert for potential assistant changes?
It's a good question. I mean, again, we know Darbs knows where the bodies are buried, but he has
incredible
survived every single coaching change this organization
and I don't think he'll
made.
be fired. I think if he's not behind the bench, he'll still have a job with the team.
Yes. I don't know. I think it worked. I'm sure John Hines would like to see a full year, right? And not only do we want to see John Hines with a full year under his belt with the team, I could imagine he maybe wants to see a full year of what he has too with that. You've got Freddie there as the goaltending coach, who I think does a fine job. I don't know that anybody, in my opinion, is an immediate release. Again, had you asked me a year or two ago, there would have been a couple guys that would have been like, yeah, they should go as well with Dean back in the day. But I think you probably see them stick. I could be completely wrong. I haven't had a pulse on it as closely because it's May and I don't really want to.
Well, they're not going to, it's kept quiet too. It's not like it's out there.
Yeah, I would say give him keep all the coaches that you have intact. Yeah. And I think just so John can have a fairer evaluation. He seems like a very fair guy and somebody that I don't know that John Hines necessarily has his guys either. He himself has moved around enough. I don't think it's not a Bruce Boudreau situation where you're bringing in your guy that has to be there with you. So I would not be shocked to have them everybody return. But again, I guess I've learned better than saying that too.
Well, and the penalty kill guy was fired along with Dean, correct? Mm-hmm. They promoted a guy at Iowa to do the PK, and I guess not surprisingly, the PK was still terrible. Because that's the one thing they have to fix,
right?
And the goaltending improving should help that. But that's the one thing that I thought was a season long, just absolutely abysmal.
And Darbs is the face-off guy, which hasn't been exactly strong either. So that's where I think it's always been kind of curious as to how Darby keeps getting through some of these changes. So that would, again, he always remains my biggest question mark, but I've been with this organization for 8 years and I've seen him survive every single one. So I don't expect that to change.
It's really interesting just how long he's kind of just stuck around. Maybe like, has he done a good job? You could argue that, but has he done a bad job? Maybe. I don't like it's so weird because he just kind of like floats by, I feel like. And maybe Jessi, you have more insight on it, but just like, who does he know? Like, does he daycare
quiet.
For somebody? Like, why does he? Oh, is that what it is? He's just kind of flying the wall?
Quiet. He's just kind of a quiet Darby. I mean, he's a great guy as a human. He's an incredible person, right? And obviously,
for sure.
He's a Minnesotan, so we love him even more.
Richfield High School.
I'm thinking that he probably was like, I could sue you guys for Dean Evson punching me so often the past couple years, and so maybe that buys him a little bit more time too.
The face-off thing is a good point. I feel like, and this might be totally wrong because it's just from watching this team since its inception. I feel like more often than not they've been bad in the circle. Mm-hmm. Like I don't remember a lot of what I would call really good wild face-off teams. They've had guys that can win draws, but I'm talking about, some teams it's like, whoa, that's unbelievable. And I don't buy the crap about that it's not that important. I think it is because it's puck possession.
Oh yeah.
But I mean there's a whole group of analytical people who will tell you, oh, face-offs, stop with that. Mm-hmm. It's like I think they're pretty damn important.
And granted, it goes to the players too, right? Like you haven't had the players. That's been the crucial point. There's been no number one center for the Wild. You know, Mikko was great, and I think Jules Eriksson, and then that's why you have Marat, who's a Zadinov too, who's supposed to be this face-off guy. But yeah, it's also a little bit of how much of that falls on Darby's plate to make sure that even, especially those young guys, are up to snuff.
I can't believe you're trying to fire Darby. I can't believe Jessi Pierce, by the way. That's Jessi Pierce. He's a Richfield guy. I love him. Lake Conference. We grew up together. Actually,
scored the first home goal for the Minnesota Wild.
He did indeed against the Flyers. Played for I believe he played for the Maple Leafs along with Johnny Pohl.
Oh.
Not teammates, but Pohl also. Wow. I once went to a Red Wings game. The Saturday night before a Vikings game I covered in Detroit. It was great because the place was packed with Leafs fans at the old Joe in Detroit. Johnny Pohl was on the Leafs back then.
Nice.
And
I like Johnny Pohl.
How about that? All right, let's finish with some rapid fire stuff from the playoffs, okay? Let's start with this one. Are we ever going to figure out, or not is the NHL ever going to figure out what goalie interference is?
God. No.
Because this has become, again, in your most important games, a gong show.
Absolutely ridiculous. Like, that is a textbook, and you're referring, I'm assuming, to Sam Bennett pushing Charlie Coyle into Swayman, right?
Well, we had one last night in the paint, and then it's not a goalie interference. We don't know.
It's constant. Like, it's just, and that's the frustration. It's the inconsistencies. I go back, and I've said it before on our Vikings podcast. I need officials to hold themselves accountable. I want a press conference with the officials. I think Jeremy Swayman even said that. He's like, I don't know. You're going to have to ask them because clearly that's not, like, that was a textbook.
Bruins
He's not
GM
able to get over. Yeah.
He came out and said, have him at a podium.
It's crazy because it's not like you're trying, as media members, we're not trying to bait the coach necessarily into saying something terrible and get fined. And we're not trying to bait, but it's like, explain this. Like, the officials need to explain that, especially with the way that video reviews go and all of the replays and access that they have to seeing these types of things, that human error can be removed very easily. So it's like you watch that even on the one angle, it's goaltender interference. Sam Bennett pushes him into it. Like, I don't understand how they continue to get that one so wrong, especially because for the most part, I would say at least 70 to 80% of the time, goalie interference is pretty easy to tell whether it is or isn't. There are certainly instances, but that one should not have as many missed calls as there has been. I just don't understand because it, to me, is not a confusing rule whatsoever. Get it together, NHL.
And when you take these, 5-minute long video reviews, how do you still get a call wrong? You have all this technology. You cannot afford, especially at this stage of the year. I can maybe let it slide if it's December 1st. That's not going to break the camel's back. This is the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. This is like teams are fighting for their lives here, and this is a game-winning goal. You have to be able to get this call correct. And I understand you make one call on the ice, you have to have conclusive evidence to overturn it. If that's not conclusive evidence, I don't know what is. Like, Judd, I think you said this. You said this off air to me. It was like, it's one of those things where you know it when you see it. That was you know it when you saw it. That is goaltender interference. And if that's not, then I need new glasses or something, because it's he gets pushed. And whether or not he could have made a play is like neither here nor there. We've seen goalies already in this postseason make unbelievable saves that they have no business making. Just a random like last second lunge and they get a stop. So if Jeremy Swayman is impeded by his player getting pushed onto him, yeah, it's probably goaltender interference. And now you have a 3-2 series that could have been maybe flipped the other way around with Boston up a game heading into Game 6. Who knows?
I think Sam Bennett probably scores that goal regardless, right? But Jeremy Swayman didn't even have the opportunity to attempt to get his pad in the area or vicinity of before that shot was taken. So it makes no sense to me. Yeah,
and I think that they did weigh the inevitability of the goal, which is ridiculous because the rule has to be the rule. Like if I probably wasn't going to make the save, but now I have no chance to make the save, I don't think that's, well, you probably weren't going to make the save. Was Sam Bennett's punch on Brad Marchand's suspension worthy? That center ice. The reverse angle showed far more of the punch than the first shot did. But should he have not played in the next game, which of course he played a key role in?
Yeah, give him a 1, Sussy. I think so. And I think that, again, going back to the officials, very odd that they couldn't find that second footage and that different angle to see that. Like, that's a sucker punch if I've seen one. Like, he just came right in and got him. I think 1 game suspension. Yes, it's Brad Marchand, so we can say what we want about him. But you're also, now Boston's down there without their captain, right? So that's not ideal. I think it was in the playoffs, suspendable. But it's easy to say in hindsight, too, because you're right. Sam Bennett played such a huge role moving forward after that. So he is enemy number 1 in Boston, I have to imagine. But I think seeing that second angle could have been a 1 game.
Yeah, and when you look at the original, you notice that Marchand, he kind of, like the way that he fell and went down, it wasn't normal. Like, he plays a physical brand of hockey. Right. I think he always expects contact. He wasn't expecting, a right hook to the jaw. So he kind of went down weird. And you're like, on a review, you have to be like, why did he go down like that? And like you said, Jessi, how does it take multiple days? It seems like to get that reverse angle. You have all the video footage in the world, but it took 48 hours to I guess we can see where people are upset.
That,
Probably should have been a 1 game, and then what is the max? $5,000 under the CBA or whatever it is, which is hilarious that Rudy Gobert gets a $75,000 fine for this, and then somebody can get assaulted. And it's like, yeah, 5,000. Slap
throw a heat pad on the floor. That won't get you anything either.
Nothing. On the ice, kill somebody. Well, you know what the thing too is, the last 2 playoffs, Sam Bennett has sneakily become Tom Wilson like.
I was thinking that too the other day.
Really questionable. Like he's now getting a reputation. I think he concussed Nyes last year against Toronto. So yeah, I think given the player and the circumstances, 1 game makes sense. And I mean, Carson Soucy got a game for that, and that was brutal. I mean, McDavid, and I know that McDavid got cross-checked from behind and was falling, and Soucy didn't realize it. But I mean, he still cross-checked him in the chops. That looked like it hurt like hell. That deserved a game too. So I think that's the
golden boy. Come on now, you can't go after Con like that.
No, well, actually, you can't. I agree with that one. Like, God forbid he's hurt. Is Paul Maurice your favorite coach remaining in the playoffs? And if he's not, why not? Because this guy's turned into a quote machine.
Dude, I've loved him though when he was in Winnipeg. And it's the way he speaks too, because it's still very kind of monotone. There's not much inflection in his voice, but he says the right things. I go back to, I think that was this year, maybe it was last year, and they had a player making his NHL debut, and he had a money quote then about, I tell those guys, go out there and enjoy it. Go out there, soak in all the sounds, because you only get one. I mean, even when he's not cursing, or even when he's not letting media have liberty with write whatever you want, I'm not going to argue about it. He's just, and he's a good coach. Like, I felt bad for him not getting it. Yeah, like for him not being able to get it together in Winnipeg because he had the talent there. And again, I think he's a good balance of a player's coach and a coach's coach. But yeah, I could work with Paul Maurice every day.
He'd be fun to cover. Mm-hmm. Age, what do you think of Paul Maurice?
Like, quote machine. I mean, it's so much fun, and maybe we were spoiled at times just because you have the kind of steel-faced Dean Evison, and then John Hines. Like, yeah, he'll throw a quote out here and there, but he doesn't exude charisma at times. But Paul Maurice, he seems like a guy. If you sat down at a bar and you had a beer or two with him, like just stories and jokes and stuff, like you could have a conversation with him so easily, and it comes across in his post-game pressers. Like he braids his team and say, yeah, they just need a little encouragement. No big deal. I just wanted to motivate him a little bit. Nothing to really bat an eye at. So
his occasional meltdowns are fantastic.
Yeah, but you
he
need
had the
that,
great
though,
one
too.
last year when the Panthers were playing terrible, and that's when Matthew Tkachuk's dad Keith went on a Canadian radio station and torched him, just embarrassed him, and then Maurice totally melted down. That was great. All right, last
I love
question.
that you just said Matthew Tkachuk's dad, and not Keith Tkachuk, right? Like
Never heard of
that's
A lot
the
of kids
new
don't know.
genre.
A
That's
lot of
hilarious.
Well, and Keith Tkachuk does not look like he played hockey now. So
No, it's true.
Keith Tkachuk, I'd love to drink with Keith Tkachuk. That guy could go to Tom Reed's and pound all night.
Brady Tkachuk's brother's dad.
Brother's dad
Yeah.
too. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Brady's at the Worlds, right?
Chucker. Yeah. Yes, he is.
I love that. I love that family.
Future Minnesota Wild center.
And our daughter, I think the daughter is a really good lacrosse player.
Oh, that's not surprising.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Some families. Yeah, I want to say I might have actually been at when Keith got traded to the Coyotes. I think they might have played here immediately. And so I saw. I mean, he was a great player, but
I worked at a USA Hockey Midwest camp where Matthew Tkachuk and Brady Tkachuk were both there at this evaluation when they were just little guys. Al McGinnis was one of the coaches in the evaluator, so I got to meet him and interview him. It was pretty freaking cool. So
And
You asking
were
about
the
that's how
Tkachuk
old
boys
I am. Also,
a pain in the ass at the time.
yeah, very much so. They were
McGinnis-
12, maybe.
McKinnis, one of the great slap shots of all time, by the way.
So good.
He's phenomenal. I think he might have broke the glass at the Met one time because he played for Calgary when I was a kid, and then I think became more famous as a St. Louis Blue. But, what a howitzer though.
It was a Calgary fan that told me, he's like, you know who Al McGinnis is? And I was 20 at the time. And I was like, no, not really. And he was like, oh God. And he was just so excited about it for me. And I was like, oh, he played for St. Louis. He's like, no, he played for Calgary.
Calgary,
All right.
yeah. Come on, Jessi Pierce. All right, last question. What is your favorite series currently going on? Because there's some very interesting series in the second round here. What is your favorite series, Jessi Pierce?
New York Rangers and the Carolina Hurricanes. I love that Carolina has kind of made that a much more interesting series. I've been on Team New York for quite some time. I love Shesterkin. I love Jacob Trouba. I like everything that they've got going in there. But I love that Carolina is making its comeback and doing its damn thing, because I did think that would be a closer series to start things off than it had been. So I would say that. I would also say maybe Dallas, because Dallas is finally making me a little
club
proud.
because you picked them.
I picked them. They have everything like that team, and they're going to be very good
great team,
for the next 2 to 3 years minimum.
And they got our
just
Lakeville
good.
kid in goal.
Yes, see, the cup will come back to Minnesota. I have very conflicted feelings about my heavy support for Dallas, but I value
should.
good hockey. I value good hockey though, and they are a good hockey team.
Do you
to
want the
watch.
cup in Lakeville? Do you want the cup to go to Lakeville? I
It'll
feel like
come
the
up
cup
to the
should
cities.
be.
He'll bring it to Minneapolis.
I feel like it should be in Wayzata or Minnetonka. I feel like it should be
Boring.
out in the lake, Big Island, perhaps.
You don't think he's got a lake home somewhere? He doesn't. Prior Lake isn't Prior Lake out by Lakeville?
Also doesn't deserve the cup. I don't want the cup at Prior Lake. I think it dried out, by the way.
Yeah.
Age, your favorite series?
Oilers Canucks. It's just two teams that really don't have a good backstop in goal, but it's just all offense. It's chaotic. Last night, 2 goals in the final, minute and 20 or whatever. Evan Bouchard steals OT away from us. My only gripe is that every game starts at 9:37.
So late.
It's terrible. That is my one gripe. But otherwise, it's
Wolves
pure
started
offense.
9:45 last night.
Oh, I hate it so much.
Didn't watch that one either.
I did. I'm tired.
Long night for you, Judd. Did you brew that
Judd.
pot of coffee last night or what?
No, I stayed away from the pot of coffee. And beer.
Back
Both
at it
very
tonight,
important to
though.
stay away from.
Big schedule release.
Good old fashioned water, huh?
Good old fashioned water.
keep you
Just
up.
pounding waters. My favorite series, I'll pick a different one then, would be the Panthers and Bruins, just for the contentiousness. Just for and Jim Montgomery on the bench now mocking the Panthers players for diving, and it's just turned into sort of a. It's weird because you keep expecting it. Like the league has warned them like twice. We're going to be watching the series very closely, and it hasn't gone there yet, but it seems to be trending that way. One thing I don't get about the entire playoffs, back to AJ picking the Oilers and Canucks. One, why did the Oilers stop playing in the third period of games? And two, how on earth did they not get goaltending help?
How many years have we asked this for?
I know, but but I mean, my
Crazy.
God, you've got Connor McDavid, you've got Draisaitl. I mean, they literally are starting a guy in goal who I think he's like my age and it was his first playoff start.
Yeah, he old.
It doesn't make sense.
And they stopped
It doesn't
playing.
make sense.
They've stopped playing like 3 times.
They are flashy Minnesota Wild. They forget to play like an entire period at times, but then they just have 2 bona fide superstars that can just carry them 2 wins.
And Hyman
like,
can score. Yeah.
Yeah, because of his privilege. But back to your point about Jim Montgomery. I need if this is going, I would be fine with this. A Boston Bruins Dallas Stars Stanley Cup final, solely because he is going to lose his mind over some of the flops that you see from the Dallas Stars roster.
True.
That would be pure
And he
comedy.
coached there.
Yeah, it would be amazing.
He was the Stars head coach.
It'd be amazing.
Oh, Jamie Benn would get under his skin so fast. It'd be very funny. Did you guys see the TikTok somebody made about Jim Montgomery when he's doing his little thing and they did like the Soldier Boy, like Soldier Boy, I'll let it go. It looked like he was doing the dance.
No, but there's some
funny.
great TikToks out right now. I saw one last night, a day in the life of Nugget superstar Nikola Jokic. Have you seen that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I play basketball and hate my job.
Yeah.
I think everybody hates their job, right?
So it's just he's got the shot down, and like his wife comes to wake him up and throws water on him. I just want to go see my horses. It's TikToks. I'm sorry, it's great. I know some folks hate it, but I think it's hilarious.
It's funny.
And Coach Chippy's been on fire of late too. If you've been watching
Constant.
Coach Chippy,
Yeah.
he's doing Bruin stuff now.
Always.
Hey
Marchie.
Hey Marchie, what's wrong?
What are you guys doing out there?
He's got the big rat face. Playing golf? You playing golf yet? All right. We are done for this week. Jessi Pierce, AJ Fredrickson. I'm Judd. We will see you later on Judd's Hockey Show.